One Spartan 2 traitor stands out from the rest, having a tragic upbringing, betraying the UNSC, fighting another Spartan 2, and even going in conflict with the Master Chief, his old friend, in new Halo lore. Guys, this story is so super underrated. So if you enjoy these lore videos, smash that like button, as it really helps out the YouTube algorithm and gets this video going to other Halo fans and helps me out personally a ton. So let's go ahead and jump into it. This video is supported by Audible. Snag yourself a free Halo audiobook right down in the description below. The Spartan's name was Soren, and his story started in 2511 when he was born and then raised in a harsh world on the outer colony of Dwarka, which was being terraformed at the time. Now, Soren had parents who grew illegal crops in the middle of nowhere, and Soren had spent heaps of time outside in the forest exploring and whatnot. Now, at the age of 6, his mother would succumb to Dwarkan disease, which, although she could have maybe recovered from it, she did not receive proper medical attention due to her dirtbag husband, who was scared of going to jail for all the illegal farming they were doing. Eventually, it was too late, and the mother had died, and the stepfather locked away her body in a box room in their home, denying the reality that it was all his fault. Understandably upset, Soren correctly assumed that it was his fault, the stepfather's, so he would plot to murder him and waited for the stepdad to fall asleep. Now, Soren was close to success, almost stabbing him in the neck, but missing and stabbing him in the shoulder instead. Soren ran off into the night and went into the forest to live. For the following weeks, the child lived off the land until he observed from afar that his father too eventually came down with the Dwarkan disease. Now, he would end up refusing to find medical help for him, ironically, and watch his stepdad slowly die in bed 2 days later. Soren would reclaim the home and bury his mom and stepdad, and weeks later, he would come across human tracks that led him about 100 miles away from his home, and he would be rushed by concerned townsfolk that saw this kid covered in tattered clothing and dirt and was more or less abandoned. He would later then be evaluated by psychiatrists, but ultimately Soren lied about what exactly happened to his parents. Months later, Soren would actually be visited by Dr. Halsey, whom was there to see Soren, who was the 66th of 150 children of similar age and similar genetic makeup that was perfect for Project Spartan 2. And unlike most Spartans, Dr. Halsey even gave him the choice to participate in the experiment that would make him smarter, faster, and stronger, or to simply have a foster home arranged for him. Soren, without hesitation, agreed. Yes. So the two would depart the planet and head to Reach to meet up with the initial training of the Spartan 2 program, along with countless others including Kelly, Fred, Linda, and even Master Chief John 117. It was September 24th, 2517 that the new Spartan recruits would be woken up, showered, and handed their gear, even socks with their name and numbers on it. Soren 066 was on his. And once clothed, Officer Mendez would begin the training of the army of 6-year-olds, the new Spartan 2s, jogging in nature across the academy, meet Deja, a dumb AI who taught them ancient Spartan history, and ended with them playing Ring the Bell. Now, this boot camp was not easy by any means, but with Soren's rather grim and hard upbringing, the harsh nature of Spartan boot camp was actually much less challenging than it was for most of the other recruits, because, well, most of them had comfortable homes, loving parents, and friends, and they were taken away from that and thrown into this harsh environment. But Soren adapted even further. He learned to camouflage, not getting too much attention from his superiors, but not being an outsider to the other Spartans as well. Being somewhere in the middle was his preferred space. And here's a tragic fact. Soren, the 6-year-old, would leave his bed once all the other Spartan recruits fell asleep to go under the bed frame itself on the wet ground itself and sleep on the floor. It made him feel safe. But time passed on. 2 years later, him and the other recruits were exceptionally trained. If you've seen the Halo: The Fall of Reach animated movie, then pretty much everything that John and Blue Team did in that movie, as well as the other Spartans, then Soren did as well. He wasn't too far from Master Chief. In fact, there's actually a confirmation that Master Chief and Soren are friends, but we'll get to that later. Soren was trained to become a fine soldier after all this time, and it was now 2525, many years after his recruitment, and he was now 14 years old. Halsey would summon Soren and recalled their first meeting when he was 6, and his decision to be a Spartan 2. Well, Soren was grateful and glad that he made the choice. She once more gave him a choice, explaining that the next step of the Spartan program was dangerous, the augmentation process, that it, well, could have ill effects that could cause serious side effects or even death. Soren, once again, gave his consent. It was 25-25 March that the Spartan 2s, including Master Chief and Soren, would go through the procedure, the augmentation process, and Soren would have a terrible nightmare during this procedure of him surviving in the woods, still haunted by his mother's death, and he even dreamed that he was in a chair, unable to move anything but his eyes, and saw his stepdad approach him, having such a vivid night terror during this procedure that in reality he was actually tied up but to a bed rather than a chair. He actually broke free from the restraints, woke up, and tried to run, punching and kicking doctors, and actually escaped the room, but soon after was shot by tranquilizer darts. Soren would wake up in the brig, tied by titanium wristlets this time, and informed that he had been in a sort of coma for 3 months, and that the augmentation was more or less a failure, that he could not become a Spartan 2. Soren had incredible upper body strength, perhaps even stronger than any other Spartan seen in history. However, he had a twisted leg, disproportionate limbs, and had a hand that turned into more of like a pincer, like a claw, and had to deal with now intense pain, and that probably started to make him irritable, although it didn't exactly say that in the book. Soren could no longer serve as a Spartan 2, but like other Spartans that failed the augmentation process, he was given a desk job. Soren was very upset about this. He had trained most of his life to become a Spartan 2, to become a soldier, and he failed. Soren would spend the next few years being a paper pusher, locked to a boring desk job, and certainly was not what he envisioned for his future. He was promised a better position, he thought, but his temporary job felt more and more permanent as time went on. And herein lies Soren's seed of resentment against the UNSC. He felt betrayed and cheated. And in some ways, Soren was even more powerful than other Spartans, so the augmentations actually in a way worked too well that his body just couldn't handle it. This made Soren vulnerable to the ideas of a technician named Parch, who fed him ideas sympathetic to the rebels, telling him that he was a victim, that they should have made better use of him, and that the UNSC was a big bully. So Soren was sold. Eventually, Soren had found himself on the side of the rebels, and the time had come to make a stand. Parch told Soren that they were going to defect and obtain a souvenir for their cause, so the two broke into a research lab one night. However, Spartan Randall 037 would interrupt their heist, a little bit confused about what they were doing, and asked for verification. And once they agreed on their way out, Soren would swing at Randall for a sucker punch, although missing once again tragically in the shoulder, and they tumbled onto the floor, now in a full-on brawl. Soren was fighting his comrade, another Spartan. Although really, Randall was an enemy to Soren now, all Spartans were. Randall was fast, but Soren was stronger, so Soren clambered onto him, holding him down with his enormously strong upper body strength, and Randall fell limp, but not by him, but rather by a tranquilizer. So Soren and Parch would quickly leave the research lab and head to the compound's airfield and find an old longsword that was basically already pre-hacked with a dumb AI that was hacked to work for them. But alarms were already going off and ship crews were already being boarded for a potential escape. So Soren and Parch would take off without another moment of hesitation. They would leave the airfield, leave the base, and try to leave Planet Reach. Although it only took moments for the UNSC to get on their tail and fire at them, and that's when they would have to manually crash, which ended up in Parch being killed in the process. And when the UNSC got to the wreckage, Soren's body was missing. The odds are he survived the crash. Dr. Halsey ordered the UNSC to stop a search, not only it being futile, but also that Soren was not a threat, just a lost soul, and they should have found a place for him, not leaving him on desk duty for years. Now, this all took place around the year of 2526 or 2525, which is still over 26 years before the Covenant invaded Reach, and up to 33 years before the events of Halo Infinite. But Soren may still be alive in the current Halo timeline, or at least we do have a confirmation he did survive the end of that story in Halo Evolutions. He did not die in that crash, because on August 2nd, 2019, about 6 months ago, it was officially revealed Halo TV show being produced by Steven Spielberg and worked on by Showtime would air Soren 066 on screen screen, played by this man, Bokeem Woodbine, and is described as a morally complex privateer at the fringes of human civilization whose fate will bring him in conflict with former military masters and his old friend, the Master Chief. Now, this confirms actually quite a few things. Number one, Soren. He is alive after the events described in Halo Evolutions. And two, he will meet the Master Chief, or at least have some kind of conflict with him, in the Halo TV show. Although the details are scarce, we don't know when it takes place or how, but we do know it will happen to some degree. And three, Soren is still at odds with the UNSC, but also Master Chief, which will undoubtedly be interesting to see how that plays out. And four, it's been more than a few years. This actor here, Bokeem, is 47 years old, which means that he is not playing as a 16-year-old, because that's when he left. I think this cast actually straight up means that he is at least 30 to 40, maybe even up to 50 years old, meaning that the Halo TV show will take place, whether entirely or at least maybe in a flashback, from 2530 to up to 2545. Schreiber's casting for Master Chief in the Halo TV show also backs this theory up, since it's obvious the TV show won't take place in the timeline as the video games, but rather sometime during all the Spartan 2's 20s or mid-30s. If you want to learn more about Soren, I left out a lot of details from Halo Evolutions, the first chapter, Paria. I greatly recommend listening to that book, because that book, unlike most, actually has a bunch of different smaller stories in it that every fan needs to know. It's 15 hours. You can get that book for free for 30 days, link down in the description. And be sure to like this video up to help with the YouTube algorithm. It really promotes this video and helps me out a lot. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Peace.